and knock it all over. We'll see. There's plenty of leg room for me because it just doesn't matter.
Okay, and here we go. We are live, and it is Thursday, August 25th. Just a couple of minutes past 10. August 25th, my sister's birthday. She's 55 today. Yeah, she's the old one. Don't tell her I said that, though. I don't want to upset her at all or anything. We'll just get these. So today with us, we have Dottie Moffett and Brad Vale. Dottie we've had you many times.
Yes.
Tell us where you're from. You are from down south of us.
Hartford, Vermont. Work for Counseling Associates as a licensed drug and alcohol counselor.
Yeah, and then we have Chief Brad Vale. And you are now with us and not with Dottie. And she tells us how lucky we are.
I may try to take him with me.
City Police Department. I formerly was working down for Hartford Police Department for many years. I was down there for 29 years.
That's a long time.
It is.
And now you decided to come up here and join us here in Barrie.
Yes.
And work on the things that you worked on down there and did
Absolutely.
Great things with, I'm told.
Yes.
Yes, that's wonderful. And so today, Dottie has joined us to talk a little bit more about the vigil that will be held and talk numbers, which are incredibly sad. When you told me last week how many were added and how many we were going to be calling, I was floored.
Yeah.
So we'll let you lead off with that and tell us a little bit about the vigil, what's happening, who's going to be there, and what we're doing.
So this will be our 7th year of holding a candlelight vigil for overdose awareness. August is Overdose Awareness Month. August 31st is Overdose Awareness Day. And 7 years ago, a group of us in Hartford recognized that we were losing a lot of people due to overdose, and that the kind of wider community response was very uncaring towards those people that had passed, and we wanted to do something to remember them and to make sure that they were seen as people and not just some addict who chose this life. And so for 7 years, we've been holding the vigil on August 31st at Lyman Point Park in White River Junction. The town of Hartford has been wonderful to us, allowing it to happen every year without question. And even in 2020 during COVID, they allowed us to come down to the park, still do the reading of the names, and that was the first year we did the event on Facebook Live. And so we've continued that because, some people can't get down to the park, or they may have given us a name for the list, but they may live further away, so it's not feasible for them to get down there. So we'll be, doing it 2 ways, in person and online as well.
Definitely gives more people a chance to participate.
Yes.
That was my first year of participating, and now I go and live streamed last year.
Yep.
And we'll do that again this year. And JD's going to join me, and there's a lot to be said for being there, though. The impact that it had a great impact online, but being there last year, and I spoke, and then just the lighting of the candles and each name, and it brings a whole different feeling.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we're going to have, I think it's 25 different community resources committed to being there that evening, bringing information about their programs. So, we've got a program that works with people who are domestic violence survivors will be there. We have MAT clinics that are going to be representing their clinics there. We have various therapists, companies that will be there. Trying to think of
Narcan.
Yeah, we will be having Narcan training and Narcan distribution there. So even if somebody can't come and stay for the vigil, I highly recommend you at least come down at 6:30. So it's like a 2-minute training. It's really quick, and grab some Narcan. I don't feel there's any excuse to not be carrying it nowadays, where it's easy to get, it's extremely easy to use, and it gives you the ability to save somebody, and you never know, that time may be the time that they decide they want to get help. And I've had to use it a number of times.
I've had to use it.
And I had to use it on Sunday. I was waiting in line to get prescriptions at a drive-through, and I happened to notice somebody sitting on a curb, and it just seemed weird. And so I just kept my eye on him and saw him go over, Narcaned him, gave him some chest compressions. He came back, refused medical care. But I did give him like the rest of the Narcan I had in my purse, and I also carry fentanyl test strips and gave him those, because at least I've given him the opportunity to reduce the harm of his use in that moment. So yeah, there will be harm reduction bags also will be distributed. We're going to have 4 amazing people share their recovery stories. Amber, who you've had on this program, will be there, and she now works in diversion.
Yes.
There's going to be another woman. I spoke with her yesterday, Karina, and she shared part of her story with me. And, she's gone from rehab to sober living, and I think it's this week she's moving into her own apartment. She's got over a year sobriety now. We have a gentleman named Tony who's going to be speaking. He works up at Valley Vista, so he's giving back to the community that he was once a part of. And he also has relatives whose names are on the list. So it just shows the generational cycle as well. And, Tony's working really hard to put a pin in that so that it doesn't continue. And then a gentleman named Ryan, who he spoke at the vigil when he had just hit 1 year of sobriety, and he was living down in sober living in Connecticut. And this was a gentleman who had been on probation out of St. J or Barry, I'm not sure which. I got him the opportunity to go to this sober living in Connecticut. They scholarshiped him. I mean, just a unusual thing to happen. And we didn't know if he'd be able to go because he was on probation. And he had a court date while he was in treatment. We called the judge. We called in from treatment. I spoke about the program down in Connecticut. And the judge said, I really feel like if I don't give you this opportunity, the next time I hear about you, you're going to be dead. And so, it was just, I will always be grateful to that judge for looking at Ryan as a person and not just somebody with an addiction. And so now he's back living in this area. He's got 4 years sober, and he works at Valley Vista as well now, so giving back to the community he once was a part of. And my hope is that when our speakers share their stories each year, is that it's maybe going to touch somebody who is struggling and they can see that recovery is possible, but that also their stories are going to educate the community so that the community starts to understand that somebody with a substance use disorder does not look a certain way. does not have a bank account that has a certain amount of money in it. They don't live in a certain neighborhood. They are around us. They are among us. They are our community members. And when they get well, they're such valued members of our community. And we have to do our part to help them get well and welcome them back into the community so that they stay well.
And how about here in Barrie? I know that I saw that we have an event coming up. I believe it was called One Pill Can Kill.
Yeah, that's a DEA campaign. One pill can kill. It's bringing awareness to fentanyl, and the problem with fentanyl. It is such a minute amount that can cause one to overdose, and it can be fatal as well. And folks, unfortunately, don't know what's in the drugs that they're using. Nowadays, it's not just plain heroin. It's generally mixed with fentanyl, or it can be pure fentanyl. And that's very problematic. So
and they're putting it in cocaine and
correct
others as well.
And I've seen it laced into marijuana as well.
Yes.
You can put it in anything, and unfortunately, when you're addicted, you just need that drug, and you go searching for whatever you can get, and that's you don't always know what you're going to get.
What you're going to have, yeah. You think you're taking one thing, and the from what I've read, I always try to learn as much as I can about these, and I know that a lot of times that can make detox a lot different as well. So if you are somebody that's using crack cocaine, things like the detox from fentanyl is the same as the detox from heroin, and the overdose is different, and the complications can be long lasting. You educated me, I believe, Dottie, that I had to keep I for up to 4 hours, I believe it was. And I had no idea of that. I thought, okay, you're we've Narcaned, you're doing okay, and that was it. And so to educate myself a little more by listening to Dottie was certainly helpful.
Right. Just because you use Narcan, Narcan just goes in and blocks those receptors, but you can relapse again right after your Narcan. So you can't just say, you've been Narcan, it's all good.
Right. I'm fine. I don't need medical help because
right.
you may.
And that is a problem. It would be better if the folks that do overdose and they're treated with Narcan, if they do seek that medical attention. Unfortunately, a lot of the times they refuse the medical attention, which is their right.
Right.
But that doesn't mean that they can't continue to overdose shortly thereafter.
And we do have a great resource here at our local hospital with Mark Detman and the crew up there that work closely with screeners and people that will help you. And
absolutely.
And so it's if you go, it's more about the fact that you're going, and you're going to go, and they're going to make sure you're okay, but they're also going to do whatever they can do to get you some further help.
Correct.
And I know that the forest works
yes
close with them.
Yep.
Up there.
Yep. And it is about connecting individuals with resources. And unfortunately, it's such a large problem nationwide. Everybody has staffing issues as well as those resource groups as well, but everybody's doing what they can, and they should partake in those resources if they're offered.
I guess the sad part for me and the hard part for me a lot of times is is making people understand that you guys aren't the bad guys. You guys are, you're really there to help us. And
correct.
That if you're doing something dumbass, then yes, the contact that they have with you is that anybody has with you is all on the attitude and what's happening. But even if the contact is because of a crime and you are willing to be appropriate and respectful, that they'll gain the same back from you, and those are the services that you actually want to help them with, because you don't want to be interacting with them constantly.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, that's a big deal, and I don't think that people always think that because of how things have necessarily been in society, unfortunately. Yeah, it's not a well, hopefully we can do more of this education and different things here in our community. Do you think that we will do something with Narcan education?
I would like to see it here more so. I would like to see more community awareness brought to the situation as well.
Mm-hmm.
You know, as Dottie had said, there's a stigma around addiction, and that's unfortunate because it can affect anybody. It can affect it doesn't. It's not prejudiced against income status or anything. It affects such a vast array of individuals,
Mm-hmm.
and we need to break down those barriers to that stigma, so people will get the help that they need. And unfortunately, there are folks that will they don't want to partake in the treatment for whatever reason.
Mm-hmm.
But if we can save just one individual by breaking down some of these barriers, it helps.
Yeah.
And meeting them where they're at. We've talked about that before, and then staying with them where they're at.
Mm-hmm.
Not saying, "Oh, I'll meet you at where you're at," but if you tell me you're not ready, then I'm going to go away. Your supports are going to go away, and instead of saying, "Well, come back and check in when you think you're ready for treatment, we can get you help." Having that contact, just
Correct.
whether it's police or social workers or therapists or recovery coaches, just somebody checking in, and because we can't be over here waiting for them
Mm-hmm.
to come to us, because in that time they're likely to die. So if we can start rethinking that and moving towards where they're at,
Mm-hmm.
and doing what we can to help them where they're at, there's a much better chance that they're going to start moving forward in getting treatment, instead of feeling alone and seeing, all the services over here, but having no idea how to take those first few steps to even get there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And where are we at this year with stats?
Numbers.
Yeah.
So, in Vermont in 2021, there were 215 overdose deaths, which was a 34.5% increase from 2020. The total overdose deaths in the United States for 2021 was 107,622, which was a 15% increase from 2020. And then I wrote down some of so in 2011 is when we really started tracking overdose deaths, and in 2011 there were 56 overdose deaths in Vermont. In 2012 there were 50, 2013 69, 2014 63, 2015 73, 2016 96, 2017 110, 2018 130, 2019 111, 2020 158, 2021 215. So we've never really had a time where there's been a consistent dip in the overdose deaths. And right now in 2022, there have been 77 overdose deaths, and there's 19 death certificates still pending. And this was through May. So we only have statistics up through May right now. Wow. Because there's about an 8-week lag.
Mm-hmm.
And I just, talking about fentanyl, there's also a new drug called xylazine, which has started to make the rounds in Vermont. 2019, there were 6 deaths that included xylazine. 2020, 5 deaths. 2021, 29 deaths. And in 2022, as of May, there's already been 19 deaths that include this drug, which is a large animal tranquilizer. It is not made for human consumption, and it is not an opioid. So it's being mixed in with fentanyl or heroin. But because it's not an opioid, Narcan will not be as effective if somebody is overdosing on a combination of fentanyl and xylazine. The Narcan will help with the fentanyl part of it, but it does not help with the xylazine. So we're seeing an increase in deaths because, again, people not knowing it's in what they're buying, and two, the Narcan is not as effective with this drug in it.
Is it not as effective or not effective at all? Because that only works with opiates, correct?
Right, but this drug is they're doing is they're cutting the heroin and fentanyl with it, so it's mixed in. So there's a chance the Narcan will help if there's more fentanyl than xylazine in it, and it's being bought in the dark web, just as fentanyl was when it was first out, so it's definitely something that, everything I've read, law enforcement is really starting to take a look at it and be more aware of this coming into communities.
I've actually shared a couple of posts about it, but again, I have not totally educated myself on the effects and what works and what doesn't work, but I have shared some of the posts and the warnings, and most recently, and I don't even, I'll probably get holy hell shit for saying this, but we had the Heritage Festival, which was beautiful. It was wonderful. We had a great time.
That was my first. I loved it.
It was awesome, and and especially I think this was the most people I've seen down here since I was a young kid, when we used to walk down here by ourselves. By the way, then to be here for that, but all of this sudden I found myself, because I had a little girl with me, scared because she was going to pick up a tiny baggie because it had a clown on it.
Wow.
And, we educate our kids, don't pick up the needles, don't do this. But that little bag was cute to her because it had a stamp on it and it was a clown. And then but it ran through my head exactly what it was. Like, you can't. So then it became, don't pick anything up. Trash or not, do not be never mind what you learned about helping pick up litter in school, and do not touch anything, because that was laying on the ground. And it was just this tiny baggie with this clown stamped on the front of it. And it said something, but I didn't get close enough to see. I just want her to leave it alone. I did get rubber gloves and pick it up and chuck it. But, and then that evening, when I was in the park, somebody had left one of the little rubber containers, which you see everywhere now. And a kid would think maybe that was a ball or a little, a treasure box, that, oh my gosh, I found this treasure box. And how scary that is, that those things can be found around now. And we also have to teach our kids about that. That scared the crap out of me. And then I told her parents, this is what happened, and we have to talk about that. We have to say this could happen, and
I think those are the things that the communities are getting tired of, and the thefts, the leaving of needles, the found baggies, and that makes it really hard to try to educate that this is a disease, and it is the only disease that is going to make somebody rob a store, steal a catalytic converter, do what they have to do to get their substance. But in the meantime, it's wrecking communities. And so how do we find that balance of supporting communities and saying this isn't fair? what's
Long-term
happening in your
treatment,
community.
long-term mandatory treatment.
Exactly.
That's, I mean,
but then having, even when somebody does get well, welcoming that person back into their community, because there is still that stigma that's now going to hang over them that, you know, you were the person that, you know, we had a rash of break-ins in Hartford a few years ago. Cumbies, a lot of catalytic converters. And
thefts as well.
so how do you welcome somebody back in that's been destructive in a community, even though they're doing well? Because people are going to see them and remember their mugshot, or they're going to remember that was the person I saw nodding out in the laundromat.
or that's the person that robbed me.
That's the person that robbed me.
Yep.
And they altered my life. So there's a whole lot beyond just the stopping of the substance and the person who has a substance use disorder getting themselves well. We also have to be working to get the communities well, because until that happens, that shame, that stigma, that judgment is going to continue to happen, even when people are doing well in their recovery, because they're remembered. Their name is burned into people's heads because of things that they've done.
And some of them have done stuff over and over and over and over. And I mean, we meet with people here all the time. We constantly hear the catch and release, and which often that makes me feel bad, in the respect that some of those statements probably true. Other of them are that people just don't know the process. They don't know what's happening. And then the same thing coming back out into the community. I don't think we're always so good about sharing what the resources are, not with just the people that need it, but with the community, to get people in the community more involved with things like working fields that helps reintroduce people, helps them find jobs. It would, having a community resource that helps you prior to getting out of treatment or prison, that says, this is how you write a resume. This is how you apply for an apartment. This is how you speak with somebody, and you be upfront about where you were and where you're at now. And you ask them not only for an apartment, but their support in helping you maintain. Teaching somebody that it's okay to maybe, and having a landlord be open to that, I'm not ready to manage my money, so I want to pay my rent on a weekly basis, because then I know you're going to get it. And routines that I think that, and we all know, I was in prison. It wasn't for drugs, but I was in prison years ago, and a lot of the women I was in prison with were addicts. They were a lot of times had dropped out of school. It was in their families. It was something that was a learned behavior, as well as, depression issues and other issues that they had had from trauma. And I remember, we actually helped a girl there do just that, kind of apply for things prior to fill out an application for even Medicare or Medicaid, and do the things that she needed to do. What a difference that would make in not having to come out and do the same hustle, because a lot of them, that's what they know how to do. They know how to hustle, and that's it. And that's sad.
Governor Scott, I think it was his August 18th weekly address, did mention that Vermont, and this is not including the money that Vermont will be getting from the lawsuits for the pharmaceutical companies, but is putting in, I believe, $8.7 million towards substance use prevention, recovery, enforcement.
Yes.
And part of that is helping people transition out of the Department of Corrections and back into communities. So my hope is that the money doesn't go to making of committees and trying to figure things
Study
out.
groups.
But let's just put the money where we know it's needed. I was happy to hear that prevention, I think, is going to get about half of the money. And then they're looking at housing, more recovery centers, upping pay in recovery centers, because recovery coaches do such a good job, a hard job, and they're not making much. And these are people who have lived experience, and that's who we want,
Right.
to be on the streets with the people that are one day sober. What better partner to have than somebody who has stood in their shoes. So I am happy that they're starting to see that we're kind of drowning, and that they're going to try to help pull us back up above water, so that there isn't a shortage of therapists. Hopefully,
Law
more
enforcement?
treatment centers,
that count?
more law enforcement, community partners through law enforcement. And I struggle with insurance. Insurance companies were fine during COVID, letting people stay in treatment for as long as the therapist thought they needed to be there, which I would keep them there a year if I could. But
Minimum.
there was no limit because of COVID. And then once things got better, insurance companies went back to 2 weeks is good enough to be in
That's a
inpatient treatment,
detox.
which is just
That's a detox.
asinine.
Yeah.
So I hope that they'll look at that and maybe see if, at the very least, Medicaid can start expanding how long somebody is in treatment for, because 2 weeks and then you're putting them right back out in the same community, many of them homeless because there isn't enough sober living, is not effective at all.
And Brad, how about you? What are you seeing here as far as use and what maybe we could use or do better?
So we do have a homelessness issue here as well. We also have substance abuse issues here, and it is unfortunate. Since I've been here, we've had I don't know the exact number, but we've had overdoses and we've had fatal overdoses. And one of the issues when you try to get individuals help, you have a short window. I'm not of the mindset to hand somebody a card and say, call this number and, maybe Monday or whatever, if you're dealing with them on a Friday night. If you have that short window that you have contact with the person, if you can get them the help right then and there, it's better off, because they may take your card, but they're not going to get right into treatment. Right. And there's where I think the disconnect is, because we don't have enough of those centers and resources to automatically, at 11 o'clock at night or 1 o'clock in the morning, whatever, bring somebody right there and say, look, this individual wants help now. And so that's one of the things that I think we as society here and everywhere can do better. But it's a struggle, and it's fortunate that Governor Scott is developed this plan to aid in the funding. We still have to find the staff to, get into those jobs.
Which is challenging
a challenge.
Begin with.
Even in law enforcement, we have staffing issues. And that was part of his 10-point plan is to address the staffing in law enforcement as well. So it's a giant effort that everybody has to be involved in to assist.
And you all have been doing very well lately with what you've got. I mentioned to you when you got here how nice it was to see somebody on Main Street and seeing an officer walk up Main Street now and again. I don't know the last time I saw that, and how I thought that was pretty damn awesome, actually.
Yeah, when I got here, I recognized that we could do better getting out of the car and getting on the street. So I asked the guy. It wasn't a big ask. I just said, listen. I said, if there's 3 officers on and activity permits, just one of you, walk up and down Main Street. Doesn't have to be all day. Just walk down one side, walk back up the other, talk to individuals. So it wasn't a big ask, and what I found is a lot of the folks, as they started doing it, did it more and more. And I only asked for once a week on each shift, and I have several officers that are partaking. Even my detective division, the detectives are getting out and walking up and down the street now too, and they seem to enjoy it, and the community enjoys it as well.
It's a connection that we need
absolutely.
that's lost. It's been lost for a while, and I think it's important that the connection is in schools and the connection is here with our community, even so the businesses feel supported and know that you're there, and the community knows that you're. I think it's a big deal, and I think it's pretty awesome.
Yeah, we have to work more with our schools as well. A lot of the children, as we've been discussing here, things are learned behaviors, or as people call it, you become a product of your environment. So if you can get in the schools and intervene, if there's issues, that helps for the future as well.
Yeah, it's a big deal to have. There's a lot of moving parts, but when they're all actually moving, and
Right.
you don't have one going and the rest not wanting to move, it makes it tough sometimes. And so it's nice to see that piece moving. That's my perspective, anyways.
Right.
And
the school systems, there's a program called DITEP, which is drug impairment training for educational professionals. It's through the Vermont has a drug recognition expert program. I used to be a drug recognition expert until I became an administrator, and I couldn't partake anymore. But I used to teach DITEP as well. And here in Berry City, they have the DITEP program. They're actually doing a training here tomorrow.
nice.
And that's important too, because what it does is the teachers and the nurses and the staff, if they recognize certain characteristics and certain behaviors, they can screen, if you will, the students to see if they're under the influence of drugs. And what that does, it's not punitive. It gets them to a safer
Help,
place,
right,
and it gets them help.
Yeah.
So those types of things, if we continue doing those types of things and intervene in the schools, it greatly aids and puts the kids on a better path.
Absolutely.
And I think knowing it's not punitive is huge as
Right.
well.
Yeah.
That they're not going to be in trouble. That there's people that want to help them.
Right.
Yeah. We actually just heard from a local business owner, Rebecca. She owns Brave, and she said, I love having the presence of the police walking the streets. It's a huge thing. Yeah. So it's definitely something that's, I think the majority of us think is a really great thing. And thank you very much for that change. And hopefully we'll see lots of other ones.
Absolutely.
And the community will be more involved and more embracing of things that may be introduced that we haven't had for a long time, and some new things. In a lot of ways, it's hard here sometimes because people still look at it as the old Barry. I feel like, nope, the cobble streets are gone, and they've been gone for a long time, and we will never have that again. And it's sad and unfortunate. It's not nothing, not the buildings, the storefronts, what's here, what's, the housing developments, none of that is working. What worked 10 years ago even isn't working now. And so we all have to work together to make that restructure the way we want to see it. But it really needs to be an effort of all of us so that these numbers can maybe decline instead of increase. A friend of mine's son died last night of an overdose, and I don't even know how many that is of people that I know and families that have been infected. And crazy.
Yeah, I think the first year we started the vigil, there were 70 people on the list, and we're over 500 this year of names that will be read.
And I want so badly for people that are participating in treatment court I'll pay for the bus. I want to bus them so that they can light a candle and say, I want my son to say his best friend's name. That's what I want. Like if I could make him bring him there and make him light that candle and say his name. That's what I don't want to say his name. I want him to say his name. And then smack him in the head and say, smarten up, really, but really, I think because the impact of it is so huge, don't hang his freaking picture on the wall and mourn his death every day. Live for him, you asshole. That's what I want to say. And then in one breath, but then I have to try to understand in the other that it's not that simple.
Yeah.
And I'm learning. You're teaching me. I'm a slow learner sometimes, but I'm trying so hard to just, it's hard when you're when you're the parent, I think, when you're the, you want to protect them, but you want to teach them at the same time. And man, that's a tough situation sometimes. And it's tough to think to yourself that you've already planned their funeral.
Mm-hmm.
You expect their death. You certainly don't hope for that. You every day you just pray and pray and pray that it's going to be okay, but you're always waiting for that call because you have to at some point switch gears and just resign yourself to the fact that that's probably going to be the case, and you have to prepare for that. And I used to be a big sucker for giving him money. And I think it was you. I don't remember if it was you or Paul Brody that said to me, knock it off. And I said, but I feel bad. He talks me into, he says that he needs food, he's hungry, he needs this, he needs that. And then I feel bad. And one of you said to me, what if your $20 is what kills him? Right. How are you going to feel then? And I never gave him cash after that. Until probably the last couple of months, because I thought he was doing okay. And so then he would say he needed cash, and I would give it to him once in a while, not a lot at a time. And then he began I'm in trouble and I need it, and I would do it because I just wanted him away from it so badly. And it's tough. It's tough. I don't wish this world upon anyone. And that's the very hard and sad part, is that the amount of people an addiction affects is huge. Your families, your community, what you're doing to yourself.
The person who's sick. Everybody becomes sick.
And that's why it's important that we all educate ourselves and we all understand, so that we can be there for each other. I mean, only in the last year have I been really vocal about it. But for the most part, I've spent a really lonely world, feeling like I was all by myself and there was no other mother like me. Well, of course there is. And, but you don't know how to talk to people about it. You don't know how to say. And now I just say, it is what it is. It's a reality of life. And I just say it, know.
And it's important, to be able to talk about it. I've seen a shift even in the way obituaries are written now.
I was just going to mention that.
It used to be
so-and-so
died suddenly at home. And now people, but, and if somebody had died of cancer, they would mention that in there. And now families are starting to put it in the obituaries that their son or daughter
succumb
struggled
to their addiction.
with addiction
Yeah.
and, you know, talk some about their battle with it and when they did well also. And I think that that is so courageous because
And it helps break down those barriers to the stigma as well.
It does. And, you know, again, somebody reads that obituary and they might think, I never would have thought that family was, you know, and it just shows that it can and does happen to anybody. And, you know, I think we have to really shift our thinking from how does this keep happening and ask the question why instead. Ask why somebody keeps relapsing, because when we ask how, all we're doing is looking at the substance use. But when we start to ask why, then you get to the layers of trauma, housing insecurity, food insecurity, lack of support. So when we ask why, we can get deeper
Or
answers
too much support.
and then start
Sometimes.
to fix it.
Or too much support sometimes. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
you know, asking why is needs to be an important shift in how we work with this, because we know how it keeps happening. They buy drugs, they buy needles, and they put it in them. You know, so asking how it stops the conversation. But if we ask why, then we start to be able to explore the human side of somebody's substance use disorder and not just look at them as that junkie or that drunk or that crackhead. You know, we see them as the people they are when we ask why. And we have to see that. The community has to see that. Because when we don't see them as a human being, it's really easy to just ignore them, to make them feel invisible. And what a horrible way to feel. Where is your desire to get help if you feel absolutely unseen in your community?
Yeah. Brad, where do you think that we are? There seem to be a lot more. I guess that's how you call it. You just say busts in the area. And do you think that that you all have found a way to partner up with other communities and divisions, and that there's kind of like a unity now in trying to combat the problem of drugs being brought into the state of Vermont and working together within the communities? And
yeah, we do partner with many agencies, even on a local level. If we have an incident here that we're dealing with, Washington County Sheriff's Department, Barrytown, Montpelier, Vermont State Police, we'll all do it together for as you call them, busts. But a lot of the problem is you have your users and then you have your dealers, and the dealing in Vermont, it's capitalism, and a lot of the folks come up from the city because they can make more money up here. Something that may cost or sell for $5 down there, you can get for $15 up here, or $25, or depending on the flavor of the drug and what the pricing is. So it's tough, but we try to focus on the dealers that are bringing it into the state. And then you have the whole other issue of the guns and drugs. So like ATF is trying to monitor that as well, because there's trading of guns for drugs, and that, like what's going on up in Burlington with all the shootings, that leads to some problems when you mix guns and drugs together. So it's really a multifaceted approach that you have to take at it. So we all do collaborate and work together on these things.
And even to me, that seems much stronger lately, where a lot more divisions have really gotten together and said, we have to do something about this. We have, we're going to work together, and we're going to. It just seems to be more lately, or maybe it's because the overdoses are up and it's more prevalent here right now than it was necessarily even a couple of years ago, which is scary. I mean, it's just scary to think that. And I don't know, through it's hard to say it's education, because you just hear things from different people that are in the thick of it all. And you know that the people that are bringing here don't stay here long. Sometimes they don't even actually come here,
Right.
but maybe once, and then they have people that they
Middlemen
distribute it
and-
when they're
yep.
here, and I guess that's a little bit of the difference too, is that when people here are buying drugs, that they need to also have that in a thought that you're not buying it from your friend next door.
Yeah.
And if you think you are, but you're really not, and you need to think about where that came from and the repercussions that maybe could come with that, because you got to make sure that guy next door doesn't owe the big guy in the city all kinds of money, or you all could be wrapped up in this big mess. And there's a lot of dangers that come with it. It's not just the overdose, it's the dangers that you put yourself in. And that's why we're probably seeing things like shootings, and we're hearing it was drug debt or drug related, or we got to be careful.
Absolutely. And we have to be careful with even things when you think you're doing good, you have to be careful. For instance, you mentioned a clown stamp.
Yeah.
If there's several overdoses based on a stamp or a logo, you want to do good by putting out the notice to the public saying, hey, beware, there's a bad batch of fentanyl out there.
Right.
But then you have the folks that are addicted that see that and want to buy those stamps because they know that's going to be a good high, because they're always, chasing that ultimate high.
Right.
So they actually gravitate towards looking for those stamps that you just put out the notice that it's problematic.
I always wondered about that.
Yeah. So, it's one of those double-edged swords where we have to weigh the options of do we put a notice out to the public that there's a bad batch, or can it have an undesirable consequence where it causes more overdoses?
Wow.
So those are all the things we have to think about in this fight, if you will, that we're all working towards.
And that's really where any harm reduction becomes so important.
Right.
Going to syringe exchanges, getting clean needles, having the fentanyl test strips, having somebody in your house having Narcan, having it in your bag. If you're using, not using alone, they have a phone number now in New England, and I think it's throughout the country, but it's called the Never Use Alone line, and you call it, and you let that person know where you're located, and if you're using, and they keep trying to talk to you, and if there's a period of a certain, a couple minutes or something where there's no response, they send emergency services to where the person is. Do people call it? Yes. Some people will never think to do that, but we have to have those options out there, because this isn't going to go away. So what we have to do is try to figure out, how do we keep people alive through this epidemic?
Right. It's we're getting close to the hour, so let's, before we go, tell everybody one more time where the vigil is, when it is, what we're doing, how they can watch it.
Yep. So it is August 31st. It starts at 6:30 at Lyman Point Park in White River Junction, Vermont. It will happen rain or shine. It will also be broadcast on our Facebook page, which is I say this every year, I need to change the name. It's the longest name ever. It's the Hartford, Vermont International, hold on. Hartford, Vermont. Yeah, it's awful. Hartford, Vermont International Overdose Awareness Vigil Facebook page.
And we keep posting the link. And
perfect.
We will also be live streaming.
Yeah. So it starts at 6:30. The speakers will start around 7 or so, and then the reading of names and the candlelight vigil portions usually starts around 8 o'clock. We will have luminary bags available if people want to decorate them for their lost loved ones. If people want to bring pictures, we will hang those up. If people have names that they want to add to the list, they can either message the Overdose Awareness Facebook page or my Facebook page, Dottie Moffat, and we will get their name on the list. And then once somebody's name is on the list, it stays on there every year going forward, so that they will always be remembered.
And before we go, what do you think about maybe doing this here in Barrie?
I think it would be great.
I mean, I know you were involved when you were
absolutely.
down in Hartford.
You know, we used to speak at the vigil down there when I worked down there. Chief Caston and other members would go down and speak about addiction and resources.
And just having the presence of
the officers down there.
The officers, the firefighters, EMTs would come, and sometimes they saw people that they had Narcaned, months before, and then they got to see them at the vigil doing well. And I mean, that is so necessary in your line of work to see people doing well, because I can't imagine how hard it is to have to respond to overdoses and then never have the opportunity to maybe see somebody in recovery. So the presence was always appreciated, and appreciated by the community as well, that Hartford firefighters, EMTs, and police would take the time to show up at the vigil.
I would love to see it here. I really would. I next year I'm going to try. I'm going to see if we can pull something together and have it here in our park, Career Park, and then coincide with you. And
it's very powerful.
It is.
And necessary. You know, these people who have passed, they deserve to have their names read. Their families deserve to hear these names, because the families should not have to feel shame in how their loved one passed away. And this allows the shame to dissipate some.
Thank you very much. Thank you both very much for coming, and you're always welcome to come. You know that, and we hope you, Brad, will do the same. We hope you will come and we can talk further about not just this issue, but other issues, and your kind of sights for the city, and how you'd like to see some things change, and we talked a little bit before we started, and I would love for the community to hear that we could have some really good things coming down the pike. And
absolutely.
So I hope you'll come back as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it was great to have you both, and so thank
back
you.
To Hartford too, but
Yeah, no,
let's not go there.
Dottie has been trying to get Chief Vale to go back to Hartford since she knew he was leaving, and I'm not going to lie, she cusses at me when I talk about him being here instead of with her. But anyways, thank you all for joining us today, and I hope you will tune in to see the vigil and or attend. Please come down. To be there is something that's pretty incredible, and I know a lot more people are affected, and it's a place that you can be and be supported as a family member, even if you're not ready to put a name on the list yet. If you're not there, attend and know that you are loved and you are supported, and that people understand, and there are resources for you too, and they have those there as well.
Yep.
And so please tune in, and we'll catch you next time tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock. Shits and giggles. Gotta love it.